Throughout history, there have been many battles between the Scots and the English. And tonight, I want to share with you the details of one of the least known, but most savage ones. One that for some unknown reason never quite made it onto the national curriculum. As a contest chair, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, it all started in 1995 on the way to the airport en route to Japan. I was the national president of Junior Chamber Scotland. My travelling companion, Paul, was the national president of Junior Chamber England. There was always a bit of rivalry between the two countries and therefore the two presidents. When Paul suggested that we travel together and stop off in Singapore en route to Japan, I knew it was going to be an exciting event. The flight went smoothly. We managed to suppress our racial stereotypes during the flight and get to know each other as we chatted. In fact, judging by the murderous looks of the people on either side of us, our incessant banter didn't go down too well with them. But we didn't care, we were enjoying ourselves. We arrived at Changi Airport and were amazed. It didn't feel like an airport, it was more like a hospital. It was so clean that I expected the customs officers to be wearing scrubs and masks rather than uniforms. But as we got outside, we were hit smack in the face by the hot, humid Singaporean night. Our only escape was to dive headlong into an enormous stretch limo, air-conditioned of course, which whisked us off to our hotel. We arrived at the hotel to be greeted by a lovely, very polite man who told us that unfortunately there had been a mix-up with the booking and that we would have to share a room with a double bed. Now, we got to know each other on the flight, but not that closely. We were national presidents of our respective organisations, and as a result of that, we were consummate blaggers. We quickly explained to the poor, hapless receptionist that there had obviously been a mistake, that we must be upgraded to the presidential suite on the top floor of the hotel immediately at no extra cost. And faced by this international coalition, he quickly realised he had to give up and he acceded to our somewhat outrageous wishes. Grinning from ear to ear, we dumped our bags in our palatial surroundings and headed off into the Singaporean night. We were both starving after the flight, so we jumped in a taxi and headed for Food Street. As we arrived, Paul grinned and said, "Let's go native," and dived out of the taxi. He was an exuberant chap, and into the first restaurant we could see. It was an authentic Singaporean restaurant. By authentic, I mean it was the dirtiest, dingiest, seediest dive you've ever seen. It had things hanging outside the window. I didn't know what they were. It looked more like an anatomical museum than a restaurant. But in we went. We looked at the menu, quickly dispatched the usual options. We were looking for something different, something special. It all came down to a choice of two things. It was either the deer's wedding tackle or the speciality of the house, braised sea slug. The waiter extolled the virtues of the latter, telling us that it was very good for the heart, and telling us that it would improve our eyesight, it would increase our sexual prowess, and it would cure every disease known to man. Well, what could we say? Our choice was made, and we waited with trepidation. I remember mumbling, "I'm sure it'll taste better than it sounds," but I don't think I was convincing anyone, at least myself. And if on cue the two waiters arrived with two enormous platters and two great big silver covers on them, and they were placed before us, with a precision that would have shamed the Swiss, the two covers were synchronously lifted off to reveal our dinner. Imagine, if you will, a loofah, only bright green in colour, sliced delicately and laid out beautifully on a platter of frog spawn and drizzled very delicately with something that looked like wallpaper paste. I just wanted to send it back, but I couldn't dare. My honour was at stake and that of my nation. So, feigning a smile, I grabbed my chopsticks and dived in. This proved somewhat more difficult than I expected. The glutinous nature of the slug, combined with the slipperiness of the sauce, made it nigh on impossible for me to grab hold of this thing with my rapier-like eating implements. My brow furrowed, my teeth clenched, I bent my will to capturing a piece of this morsel. Opposite me on the other table, my colleague, across the table, my colleague was doing the same thing. This simple meal was transformed into a battle of noble proportions, more furious even than Bannockburn. The people next door to us stopped their eating. They started placing bets on us. The stakes were going higher and higher as we slipped and slithered trying to catch this. But at last, I was successful. I skewered a quiver of this morsel and stuffed it into my mouth. With a look of triumph in my eyes, I swallowed. It was hideous. The only thing that made it palatable was the look on my fellow diner's face as he had to chew his way through the same rubbery goo. I don't remember much else about that night, but I do remember it was just as well that we managed to secure the presidential suite because it had 2 toilets and we spent the night one each. Ladies and gentlemen, the score that night might have been 1-0 to Scotland as we left the restaurant, but as the sun rose over a new Singaporean morning, it was the sea slug that won the day. Mr. Tommy, contest.